The moment I said we got two more, because like two more sounds like tumor, and especially if you have a bit of an Arnold Schwarzenegger, it's not a tumor. It is not a tumor. But we got two more to read. It's just funny because we did literally just read an SCP about tumors growing into cats. So, but here we go with Children of the Void. Oh boy, this sounds like one of those ones that, like, the title alone sounds like it has a bunch of extra stuff to read. Save 3 instances of SCP-1798 are to be maintained within the botanical wing of Site 172. Additional instances may be created at the discretion of the senior researcher assigned to SCP-1798. Instances of -A are to be stored in standard humanoid isolation cells. No more than 2 instances of -A or -1 are permitted to exist at one time, and direct interaction is forbidden. -1 instances are to be terminated at the conclusion of testing. Description: SCP-1798 is a plant whose structure is interlaced with an unknown mineral substance. Let's see, is this another SCP? The Slumbering Prince. It is not, but this is a short read, so let me just. It is characterized by broad, iridescent blue-green leaves and an angular, rigid root network. SCP-1798 propagates from cuttings, but possesses no other means of reproduction. It does not require water, and once fully grown has no additional nutrient or sunlight requirement. Fully grown plants can survive indefinitely in isolation. So that Slumbering Prince is here. The Slumbering Prince, he was Sleep's awakened Lord's scary dream boss. Let me just do this so I can actually read it. It should be noted that the Slumbering Prince has a great many pseudonyms that incorrectly characterize it as being asleep. It is in fact very much awake. And then we have Conspectus. The Slumbering Prince is a being that exists in the space between the various realities that make up the multiverse. Though some people incorrectly believe it to be a reality unto itself. The sole driving force behind its existence is to find a way out of the void it currently occupies and into some small piece of reality. It is currently hindered by the fact that its doorway into other realities is the human mind, and that this doorway is blocked when humans are awake and conscious. Were to try and enter a reality in which even a single person was awake, it would be much the same as a human trying to pass through a mesh grate. It might get through, but it wouldn't survive the effort intact. Illustration. While the exact form and nature of the Slumbering Prince is unknown, its adherents frequently find themselves in possession of stones which they claim are fragments of some part of its being. Yeah, let's just read this. Knowledge. While it is accepted that the Slumbering Prince does have form, no one has been able to accurately say what form it is. What the form is, okay. In the dreams it visits upon its followers, it has been described as a large but indistinct shadowy figure. Fragments supposedly of its body take the form of colorful stone that glows faintly from within. It is able to talk to those willing to listen through their dreams. It communicates through thoughts and feeling rather than words, but it is very articulate in its application and is therefore able to be precise with its meaning. Despite the fact that it does not use conventional language, the prince is a skilled orator and rhetorician. Those people it chooses to commune with frequently find themselves referring it. It is able to manifest parts of its body in a given reality seemingly at will by extending part of itself and then cutting it off. Here we have like 1,000 footnotes, so let me just scroll down to... Never mind, I will not scroll down. It can be theorized that should choose to enter reality while people are still awake within it, that reality will become flooded with these fragments, effectively destroying that reality in the person itself. What kind of weird dream logic is that? It makes zero sense. When pieces of its body enter reality, they are cut off from the rest of its being and become these stones, right? Imagine it like being a spinning fan. If you stick your arm into it, it will get slashed off and land on the other side. If you ran bodily into the fan, you're going to get hacked to bits, and those bits will land on the other side. If we assume the prince has a reality scale size, which I don't think it's unreasonable considering its ability to communicate with vast numbers of different realities, if we choose to run bodily into a reality, the spinning fans that are the human minds are going to make a real big mess. You're making a whole lot of weird assumptions there, starting with the fact that these stones are actually a piece of its body and it's not just some metaphor. Jesus didn't literally turn into bread, you know. Now, we had a footnote that had a whole addendum attached to it, and now we have footnotes that argue with each other. In addition to having a pleasing aesthetic quality, these fragments are able to put nearby people into a deep sleep, while so effective communication with the slumbering prince becomes easier and clearer, thus they are frequently used in ritual practices. Nature, the singular desire of the slumbering prince is to escape the void between worlds and in reality. To that end, its focus and that of its followers is devising a way to put all humans on the giving earth to sleep or to otherwise render them unconscious. Curiously, wholesale extermination of human life is not one of the methods it is attempted to adopt. Here we have another little back and forth. The implication of this, combined with the fact that it hasn't simply entered an uninhabited universe, suggests that it actually uses humans as a method of travel, or J, which is a nice way to say that it will probably erupt out of the heads of all sleeping humans should it manage to do so, VK. There's no reason to believe this process would be fatal or even damaging. It's never appeared actively hostile towards humans after all. History and associated parties. There are two theories regarding the origin of the slumbering prince. The first, that it has always existed in some form, unaware of anything beyond the void it inhabits, until humans began appearing throughout the multiverse, where their minds began glowing like beacons to it. The second is that it was created by humans themselves, perhaps as some echo or reflection of human thought casting out through the spaces between realities, until it coalesced into a singular being, which, if either of these is true, is unknown, and the prince itself has not been forthcoming on the matter. The prince influence is... Let me just read how much is there? Oh, that's easy. Okay. The prince influence is usually spread through small religious groups. These groups all give themselves different names, have different names for slumbering prince, and very rarely interact with one another. So the different names, some examples include Eyes of the Watcher, the Sleeper's Keepers, and Bellum Somnus, and interact with each other. This is due to the relatively obscurity and difficulty finding one another, especially considering the multi-universal spread, rather than any particular impetus towards non-cooperation. These groups are usually harmless, practicing various forms of meditation and drug-induced altered states of consciousness as methods to try and get closer to the slumbering prince. Now a footnote. There's a lot of footnotes. Ironically, failing to realize that the simplest method is just to get sleep is in most cases. In some cases, though, especially if a group has managed to get their hands on a fragment of its body, they become more extreme. These extremist groups often attempt to actually bring the prince into their reality. Given that this requires every human on the world to be asleep, these methods tend towards the grandiose. A great many methods have been attempted to achieve this, but they have universally failed. In situations where they have gotten close to have been actively denied by some group or another, usually the Global Occult Coalition or the SCP Foundation, or whatever analog for these institutions exists on their world. Approach. Contacting the slumbering prince is simply a case of falling asleep with a knowledge of its existence and a willingness to communicate with it. Once this is achieved, it will usually make itself known in a dream. As mentioned previously, the slumbering prince is very good at convincing people to enter into its service using a combination of projected emotions and imagery. As such, adequate mental reparation should be undertaken to sufficiently resist its seduction. Unless, of course, entering into its service is your goal. Observation and story. Sleep, my child, so I might awaken and return to the world that paradise might begin, except from the Tome of Sleepless, written by the Sons of the Dream. A number of cultures throughout history have had folklore and mythology surrounding dreams. While it would be a leap to assign all of these belief systems to the slumbering prince, a few of them may well have originated from its affecting of dreams. For example, a number of cultures have charms designated to ward evil spirits away from the dreams. Especially in older, more superstitious times, a person raving about the wonderful new god they saw in the dreams could very conceivably cause people to seek a defense against such intrusions. In a more specific case, the succubus is a seductive entity that appears in dreams and spurs the dreamer into horrible acts in exchange for pleasurable rewards. The entire myth of the succubus may have started with the prince reaching into people's dreams and getting warped over time, as these things tend to do. While this is mere speculation, the number of commonalities between a lot of dream-related folklore does lend credence to the idea of common source, RJ. We shouldn't be assigning every single piece of history, even vaguely related to dreams, to this thing. There are plenty of other entities out there that communicate through dreams after all, and some of them are a great deal more dangerous than the Slumbering Prince, VK. I'm not saying we should, I'm just saying there's an awful lot of coincidences out there to discount its influence entirely. The Great Dreamer exists in the minds of all the people of the world. When they sleep, he reaches out to them and gives them dreams, hopes and aspirations, but when they are awake, he is trapped, unable to touch humanity. If everyone was asleep at the same time, he would be able to enter the world in full. He would usher in an age of paradise, fulfilling the wishes of everyone on earth and bringing peace to all humanity. This is why we worship him. He has guided mankind through our dreams since we were living in caves and will continue to do so until we are as gods ourselves. Spoiler for One Piece film Red. This is basic. Wait. It's gonna be a one sentence. So like once this, skip to 10 seconds ahead. It's basically the plot from One Piece film Red, with Utah wanting to trap everybody in dreams and making their wish come true. Description of the Slumbering Prince from an interview with one of its worshippers. VK. Feel free to message me if you want the whole thing, but it's a lot of flowery speech and rambling and very little actual substance. A great number of realities, especially those on the baseline arc, have a number of works of fiction on the pop culture that may well be inspired by the Slumbering Prince in some way. While it's impossible to prove at this point, considering many of them are long dead, the works of other authors such as William Pendergast, H.P. Lovecraft, and Arquillus Anatole's Third all feature entities of great power that are sleeping or dreaming or interact with dreams in some way. The similarities between these fictional entities and what we know of the Slumbering Prince are large enough that we must consider the possibility that its reach is greater than immediately apparent. I've seen a place where worship of the Slumbering Prince has become an organized religion. They have churches and rituals and an 8-meter tall piece of that body stone stuff that people make pilgrimages to. Their entire religion is based around praying while asleep, and not getting at least 9 hours of sleep every day is considered a sin. Finally, religion I can't get behind. The holy books say that if everyone was asleep, the prince would emerge, the world would become like a dream, and no one would ever sleep again. Doubt. Almost all the information available on the Slumbering Prince comes from its worshippers and people who have themselves made brief contact with it. As such, its true motives for wanting to enter physical reality are unknown. What will happen if it does, and what effects it will have on the broader multiverse are mysteries that may never be answered. Indeed, it is entirely possible that its very nature has been completely misunderstood, given that the only real contact with it is performed through dreams. We cannot discount the possibility that some of other force or entity is masquerading as a greater power, perhaps using these supposed fragments of its body as tools to manipulate people into worshipping it. Though again, to what end we can only speculate. It would be quite a charade if it was some other being posing as the Slumbering Prince, given that evidence of its religious sects goes back hundreds of or maybe thousands of years across countless realities. If this supposed being was this powerful and organized, why not just represent themselves accordingly? RJ. The part that makes no sense to me is why are fragments of its body made of this stone? Is this entire thing made of stone? If it didn't make it into reality, would it just be a giant statue? Perhaps some kind of cross-reality contextualization. Reality we know it has no context for whatever makes up the prince's body, so when it manifests part of its closest thing, So when it manifests parts of it, my god, let me read the whole thing again. Reality as we know it has no context for whatever makes up the prince's body. So when it manifests parts of it, the closest thing we have to it is this stone material. Wouldn't be the first time we've seen things like that happen. Remember the threat of Antares? The threats were completely different. It was something that crossed out of reality and back again. This is something that has never fully existed within established reality. Let's face it, this thing may well be as old as time itself and we have no fucking clue what it is, what it wants, and what will happen if it gets it. You can choose to believe what it tells people or not, but we're never going to find out either way. Most worlds have way too many people now. If it was going to happen, it would have been a while we were still running around sacrificing each other to the sun or some crap. Okay, now this was all information to know what kind of stone, like plant whose structures interlace with an unknown mineral substance. So like, now we know that it's connected to that. Now we can go on. Ingestion of SCP-179-8 triggers a number of changes in human subjects, and the changes is SCP-179-8 has no effect on non-human subjects. Glad to know that like you get to specify that. The initial change occurs within 1 minute of ingestion. The subject will enter an altered mental state, causing him to appear drowsy. As we saw, the stone, the prince, wants to make people fall asleep. Uncoordinated and occasionally incoherent. Communicating with subjects in this state has been likened to talking to someone who is sleepwalking, and they are prone to frequent hallucinations. E.g., readings are consistent with REM sleep, although subjects no longer appear to require or be able to sleep. Additionally, subjects no longer require food or water and no longer produce waste. This effect is permanent. After 3 weeks, subjects will undergo severe and sudden physiological alterations. Over the course of approximately 30 minutes, all skin, muscle, connective tissue, and internal organs will be replaced by an unidentified translucent inorganic material with an iridescent blue-green coloration, henceforth referred to it as its outer layer. At the same time, the entire skeletal structure is replaced by large intertwined strands of a material that visibly resembles nerve tissue. Another footnote. Attempts at sampling these materials have failed. These alterations have no impact on the subject's ability to move or interact with the environment. Subjects that reach this state are classified -1. Following these alterations, all extant instances of -1 enter a form of shared consciousness. While each instance retains some level of individuality, they are able to share sensory input and communicate even when isolated. Due to the frequently erratic behavior of -1 instances, it is believed that the hallucinations persist in this state and are also shared. During brief bouts of lucidity, -1 instances will begin lamenting the fact that they changed too soon or that he wasn't ready for them. They will also frequently state that we are like him now, and we are his children. To date, all instances have been unable to or unwilling to expand upon these sentiments. I assume the prince, right, that we read before. Discovery. 2 specimens of SCP-179-8 was discovered in a cave in the Alai Mountains of Tajikistan. They were covered with SCP-179-8 with a number of inscriptions and carved idols that suggest the cave and surrounding area was home to members of an unknown religion. Translation of the recovered inscription from Old Persian suggests that SCP-179-8 was intended to be ingested following the arrival of some unnamed entity that was the subject of their worship, and that doing so before this event was forbidden. And the footnote of Old Persian says dating to an era to approximately 500 BCE. Based on tools recovered from this site, SCP-179-8 itself is believed to have been created through a primitive form of thaumaturgy. Incident 1. On 11th 2013, as part of routine testing, 3 instances of -1 were moved to the same chamber. After a short period of inactivity, all 3 instances approached one another and visibly fused together. The outer layer overlapping and the strands of materials that replaced the original skeletal structures intertwining into a single amorphous mass. Man, we got a bunch of SCPs that make people just become a mass of things, right? Let me finish this real quick. The outer layer then began expanding rapidly, breaching containment and quickly enveloping the 2 levels of Site 197 within itself before automated security protocols are activated and the affected floors were sealed. Security cameras that remained functional showed personnel enveloped within the entity were asleep or unconscious before being impaled by strands from the central mass and rapidly undergoing transformation into -1 instances. These new instances were immediately integrated into the mass. Analysis of blueprints of the affected floors, security footage, and likely positions of lost personnel suggests that the layout of the entity resembled a series of interconnected neurons suspended in the material filling the area, with each integrated individual forming a node for further connections. Following the determination that further breaches were imminent due to the increasing pressure behind the sealed sections, the decision was made to detonate the security fail-safe devices in the lower sections of Site 197. The bottom 5 levels of Site 197 were destroyed along with the entity and 76 personnel. No additional security breaches were reported. Leftover biological matter from the entity has been stored at Site 172 for further analysis. 5 personnel escaped the lower levels prior to their destruction by climbing through service tunnels. The transcript below is the post-event interview conducted with one of the survivors. I just want to check something. Okay, so this one just leads back to the slumbering prince. Alright, good, then we're almost done then. Interviewer Agent Marcus Villacorta. And interviewee, junior researcher Antonia Cardenas. Opening introduction removed for brevity. Okay, let's go back to before the detonation. Walk me through what happened. Sure. I missed lunch, so I was in the canteen alone. I heard a noise from the floor above, like I said. Lots of loud banging and grinding, and then the security alert kicked in. I could hear the emergency bulkhead slamming shut. Automated systems triggered the lockdown, yeah? What do you do next? I followed protocol. I couldn't leave the site because the regular exits were blocked, so I sealed the doors to the canteen and waited. I was in there for about 20 minutes. That's when it started. The voices. You heard voices. Where were they coming from? I'm not sure. Everywhere? And well, they weren't really voices. It was more like, you know when you drift off, start daydreaming, and random thoughts start popping into your head? It was sort of like that, except the opposite weren't my thoughts. They were louder. Louder? Yeah, I mean, we all have done basic psy training, right? I know what telepathy feels like, when something is trying to talk into your mind. This was something else. I don't think it was, whatever it wasn't thinking at me. Just thinking so loudly that everyone could hear it. Can you describe it? What was it thinking? Wait, can you describe it? What was it thinking? I'm not sure. It was alien. I'm not even sure it understood what language was to start with. It wasn't using words. I got the impression everything was new to it. The best way I can think to describe is that everything was exciting and confusing, and it was vast. What do you mean? Sorry, I'm still trying to sort this all out in my head. It was a little overwhelming, especially at the end. It's okay. Take your time. All I can think to do is keep comparing it to things we could feel, but it seems so inadequate. Have you ever just laid in the grass and stared at the sky, nothing else in view? Just the sky and the clouds, and if you lie there for long enough, the world just sort of goes away. The great expanse of blue in front of you is all that exists, and everything else seems flat and small. And then when you finally sit up, the world feels a little bit less somehow, like its only purpose is to get in the way of the sky. Several seconds of silence. I understand what she means with just looking into the sky and just seeing the blue sky, and then you just completely forget about the world for a little bit. That I understand, but the last part was look up and then the world feels less. I'm like, I think I actually know what you mean. Every single thought from this thing was like that. The scope of them was so encompassing that everything else was just getting in the way. Did anything change in these thoughts? Yeah, I think it was learning. The thoughts were definitely getting more complex, more structured. I think it was developing its own language, started to develop that kind of flow to how it was thinking. That carried on for about 30 minutes. I think that's when I realized it was trapped and it became aware of us. It became aware of you? Did you try and communicate with you directly? Nothing like that, no, but the thoughts became more targeted. It felt like it was searching and hungering, not for food or anything, for knowledge, experience, growth, maybe? When it saw me, I could tell it wanted me. For what? I don't know. I'm not even sure it knew I was a person. If you see a conch shell on the beach, you pick it up, right? You don't give much thought to the fact that there might be something living inside. That's when I heard the metal bulkhead starting to groan. We picked up a massively increased pressure on the security doors. Right, a potential breach, a big and whole section of the side gets scuttled. Maybe the entire thing. So I headed for the service tunnels. They weren't sealed off because the breach wasn't actually on the floor, so I got to the tunnel and I climbed. And that's when the structural charges were detonated. Yeah, I felt it. Felt it die. It was more sad than anything. Startled, maybe. Like I hadn't considered death before the very moment. It was so intense, I nearly blacked out. Maybe I did. Next thing I remember, I was just hanging from the ladder and there was something else. Right before it ended, yeah, a silent scream, rage and sorrow. Different from everything else I felt from the thing. What do you think it was? I don't know. We don't know everything that's out there in the universe. We see monsters, things from other dimensions, things that defy logic and reason, even things that call themselves gods. I don't know what it was, but there's something out there, and I think we just killed its baby. That's a very ominous way to end it. That's a very ominous way to end it. Just be like, yeah, no. That's why it's called Children of the Void. Yeah, okay. I mean, yeah, it's also like, trying to like get inside people and all that stuff. But interesting. I'm glad I read that extra story because otherwise I think I would have less understanding of it. But yeah, it looks like whatever that. I wonder if that story of that we read afterwards, where it was like, oh, something's trying to get to our dimension, but it's becoming rocks when it does that. I wonder if it's aware that the Foundation killed one of the children, and that's why it's like trying to get to us. It's trying to have like vengeance.